Behind the scenes of these videos, I deal with a lot of stuff. One of the major things being a pretty challenging disorder I've been dealing with for a while now. I'm told it's called PCSD, which is a shortened version of post-competition sport disorder. It started around the time that the M5 CS came out, and what happens is that in random points in time, I get real twitchy and start getting like hallucinations of that gold CS badge. It could happen when I'm at home trying to work, leaving the grocery store, or in my bed trying to go to sleep. It's not something I'm proud of, but I think it's hard to ignore how that car really set a benchmark for European sports sedans in a way that I don't think has been replicated since, and I think it's affected me personally in ways I couldn't have ever imagined. Now we have a new M5, which I've already driven and filmed, but this time around we've got the big back version, the M5 Touring. So now that I've been able to actually live with the M5 and spend some proper time with it, what we're gonna do is break down the true reason why, despite the M5 being a sales success for BMW, is being seen as a critical fumble by enthusiasts and BMW fans alike. But we can only do that if we drive this car back to back with the only other performance wagon available in America right now. Let's just get the heaviest hitting topic right out of the way. I came into this car after driving the new CT5e Blackwing, which no one would consider a lightweight car by any sense of the word. But when I tell you the jump from that car to this felt like going from a Porsche Cayman to a Chevy Camaro, it's crazy. And it's actually funny because America is synonymous with everything being bigger, including its people, whereas Europe is synonymous with having small, tiny cars because of all the skinny and fit people that drive them over there. Look how the tables have turned. 5456, that is the official weight figure of the M5 Touring with a full tank and an empty cabin. And that makes this car 500 pounds heavier than the RS6 Avant and 700 pounds heavier than the E63S wagon, which, to be fair, that's a discontinued car, and I'm sure the new one is going to be a heck of a lot heavier. But the reason the weight of this car has been such a major focal point in online discourse is because that is 1,400 pounds heavier than the last generation M5 CS, which to many people is peak M5. But let's be real, McLaren is probably the only brand in existence that isn't making their new performance cars heavier. Every other OEM in this segment has a performance sedan that's either touching 5,000 pounds or has a car that's just as heavy as the new M5, and that's because of all the tech and hybridization and whatnot. And in the case of this car, the hybrid system adds almost 200 extra horsepower and almost 40 miles of electric-only range. So this should be significantly faster in a straight line than the previous M5, right? Right? So one of the big things that people criticize this new M5 for is being slower than the old one when going from 0 to 60. The previous gen M5 CS did like a 2.5 or 2.6 second 0 to 60, which is pretty crazy for a non-hybridized car. This one is quoted for like a 3.6. I think we've seen the sedan version, which is a couple hundred pounds lighter, do like a 3.2 or 3.1, something like that. Let's see what we can do here. It is 65 degrees. We're on Pirelli P0, so the best tires known to man, pretty much. But the road is dry, so I think we should be able to get a high 3 second 0 to 60. I think we should be able to knock out sub 4. I'm in automatic shifting, so I'm not manually shifting. Okay, I'm in dynamic plus, DSC is off. I'm in 4-wheel drive mode as opposed to 4-wheel drive sport. All of the settings that people recommended I get into last time when I did a launch control in the M8. All right, enough talking. Let's do this. All right, foot on the brake, launch control. I will say, that's one of the faster launches I've done. Once it went past 60 and started getting into other alleged numbers, that was a lot. That was a lot. But let's see what we did. 0 to 60 in 3.38. Zero to 60 in 3.38. That's a verified time right here. 0 to 60 in 3.38. Okay, maybe this isn't as slow as I thought. This is a 5,500 pound car, or just under 5,500 pounds. I don't think people realize how heavy that is. even if you do have 717 horsepower, almost 5,500 pounds, that is a lot. 3.38. I want to run that back one more time. I want to see if we could get even faster, if it would be slower. Let's see. Let's run that back. All right, last time for real this time. All right, I definitely felt slower. That felt like noticeably slower than the last two launches. I think we're getting slower with every launch. So our tires are clearly not handling this quite well. All right, 0 to 60 in 3.39. All right, so under 3.4 is the number, which, I mean, that's quicker than BMW claims the car can do. It's quicker than I thought it would do. So, you know what? I'll give credit where credit is due. This is not a slow car, all right? It's heavy, but it is not slow, and I've never said it was slow, but I was honestly expecting like a 3.7, 3.8 at best, especially on the street. Now imagine if we had good tires. Imagine if we had Pilot Sport 5S's. Imagine if we were on a drag strip with better tires. We might do like a 3. All right, okay, BMW. Mercedes and Audi are two brands making performance cars with very similar weight figures to BMW, but for whatever reason, they seem to be ducking all of the smoke online. The new GT63 four-door hybrid e-performance whatever weighs 5,200 pounds, and this Audi RS6 is just edging on that 5,000 pound mark, but why are they the exception to the rule? The Audi RS6 is in an interesting spot. I think there's not a lot of people who don't love this car, and personally, I think it's just a little bit overhyped online, but you gotta give Audi credit where credit is due, because at least here in the United States, Audi has been carrying the performance wagon segment for the past 5+ years. It came into play right as the Mercedes E63 was taken out back to rest for the final model edition. And I think a lot of people like that car more than they ever did the Panamera wagon or the E63S wagon because it just looks great. This car, to quote the cool kids, simply has aura. If I were to make a top 10 list of cars that kids on TikTok online who don't have driver's license glaze to oblivion, this would be in the higher end of that top 10 for sure. That's just, it has such an amazing presence. I think Audi perfected the absolutely play it safe design inside and out. Really simple, minimal, but clean interior. Definitely has adequate performance. And then the exterior, 10 out of 10, no notes. And then there's the M5, which to a lot of people reached unimaginable heights with the CS model. And now he's got this one, which is heavier and slower. But there are some things that this new M5 does really well, to be honest. My dad used to have an E46 M3, and after a certain point, he had to sell it for something else because it was just too rough of a car to do his daily commute in, and this was with 0 modifications outside of some tiny little lowering springs. But with these new M's, that's not even something you would ever be concerned about, being able to use the car every day. What BMW have undoubtedly done a fantastic job at is tuning their high-performance sports cars to be genuine daily drivers at the same time. And this new M5 is the best example of that so far. The suspension in this car is almost 7 Series-like as far as how well damped and composed it is. A few videos back, I had the BMW M8, which shares a similar platform to the outgoing M5, and the difference in ride quality for everyday stuff is night and day compared to this car. This could truly be your do-everything-in car. You're not going to be fatigued after long drives in traffic or road trips, anything like that. It really is your one-stop shop M car, and that's something you couldn't say about certain versions of previous M5s, including the CS. And yes, we know the previous M5 is technically quicker than this one as far as timed performance tests. The hybrid system is something you can actually feel. I'm just going to stop. No launch control, just punch it. That instantaneous hybridized punch is just something you're not going to be getting with a non-hybridized M car. And so if what you're looking for is just best-in-class straight-line acceleration with a little bit of V8 rumble, this car fits the bill for that. And apparently that is something a lot of people want because this new M5 is selling very well, apparently. Coming right off the heels of the CT5V Blackwing, the last car I drove on this channel. Yeah, the handling, the balance, it just isn't there compared to something like that. But I have to admit, if you're not doing super technical canyon driving or really precise track work, which I mean, like I said in the last M5 video, not many people with these cars are going to do that sort of stuff. If you just want to have fun on a canyon road with not super technical swoops and corners, this new M5, while you certainly feel all that weight, gets the job done. It doesn't really feel sketchy until you enter those really tight hairpins and fast braking corners. But for long swoops, the car does perfectly fine, and on a good set of tires, you'll be a-okay in something like this. BMW clearly tried to give you a setup that would feel confident despite all the weight that you're lugging around. And then obviously for straight line, freeway, Autobahn mobbing, this car is excellent, just like every other M5. But that's kind of where the pros of driving this newer car start to end. I've definitely noticed that the transmission doesn't feel as snappy and as responsive as previous versions of this car, and I think that has to do with the hybrid system, because it feels just like it did in the BMW XM I reviewed a few years ago. I feel like the hybrid system is just adding some extra step to the gearing process that adds a slight little delay and adds to a lack of snappiness like you've got in the M3s and the M4s and the M2. Just isn't quite as satisfying. And then yeah, compared to a handful of other all-wheel drive performance sedans on the market, it just feels a little bit sloppy in the corners because of all that weight, and you can see it when looking at my exterior cameras, just seeing how the suspension reacts and tries to handle all that weight when lugging it around corners. It clearly isn't as tight as the previous M5 was. And yes, that's made it really great for comfortable cruising, but for more technical scenarios, that's where it starts to fall apart in very specific situations. The RS6, on the other hand, feels so much tighter and composed in comparison to the M5, and while it doesn't necessarily have that instantaneous hybrid punch that the M5 does, it doesn't feel that much slower in the real world. Sometimes you kind of have to let go of the 0 to 60 and the quarter mile and all these metrics that most of the people who buy these cars aren't doing anyway, and just think about how the car actually feels to drive. That's what matters at the end of the day. Audi's never really been known for having super bodacious exhaust setups from factory, and the RS6 is certainly no exception to that. Of course, this is mildly modified, so you can hear that even Turi intake up top as I go up and down through the gears. It's a really nice sound. I think the main thing is that it just sounds like a real V8 compared to the pretty synthetic engine sounds that you're getting from the M5 Touring. This doesn't do any of the trickery. This does have, it seems like just a little bit of like pumped in audio, but for the most part, it feels like you're actually driving a real V8. One of the first things I noticed when I got in here is how more crisp and responsive the shifts are in this car compared to the M5. This isn't using a PDK or an Audi, DSG dual clutch setup. This is just an 8-speed torque converter automatic, just like a lot of other new performance cars these days. But the responsiveness, the snappiness of the shifts, like I said, when not dealing with that hybrid setup, that kind of causes this like delay in shifts. And I would probably prefer this for canyon driving just because of the responsiveness of the gearbox alone. Yeah, the balance, so much better. Weight transfer coming out of corners, it's night and day. This feels like I'm driving an RS4 wagon, even though I'm driving the flagship wagon from Audi. It feels like I'm driving a smaller RS4 when hopping out of the M5 and jumping into this. It's crazy. If I were to talk about any driving cons of the RS6 versus the M5, is that you don't have the kind of dual personality, because with a click of a button in the M5, I can hit M2 and I've got a pure rear-wheel drive mode, everything traction off, and it's an absolute tail spinning, just like wild thing. This is so much more composed. Audi and Porsche, they have that thing where it's like you just get in and it's just so technical and precise and clinical about doing exactly what you want it to do, not making any mistakes. But sometimes you want a little bit of mistakes. Sometimes you want the rear end to go out just a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit. Similar to BMW with the M1 and M2 button, Audi also has a one-click complete personality switch button. It's the RS button here on the steering wheel. You give that a click, and yeah, it opens up the exhaust valves. The car just livens up. You can put it in manual mode for the gearbox. And yeah, this is a genuine canyon carving wagon. I think much more so than that M5. Just like the M5, I don't think this is a car I could own without doing some form of modification. Definitely exhaust, even Turi intake. like the owner has on this one. I like that there's less going on. You know, you don't have the massive center screen and all these crazy modes and switches. When you want to have fun, just hit RS and then that's it. Not to mention the RS6 has other luxury features that the M5 doesn't have. Soft closed doors. A lot of things that are manual in the M5 are automated in this car. The touchscreen is more satisfying to use with the haptic feedback on the main screen here. It just feels so much more like a luxury car as an overall experience, which is crazy because that M5 is not cheap. We're talking almost $150,000 fully loaded. There are things I like about the M5 that this car doesn't do. This car doesn't have as much of a hooligan personality, but I do think it does the luxury car thing better. Me personally, I don't think I would have a use for two wagons, but I think for some kind of guy out there, I think there is a world where you could have both and kind of enjoy each car for what it does best. It's hard to say who the definitive winner is here, but I think Audi has a more complete car for the money versus the BMW. And it feels better to drive just because it's a lot lighter and it's smaller. Let's say that Audi came out with an RWS version of this car, similar to how they did the rear-wheel drive R8s back in the day, that had 50 less horsepower but was rear-wheel drive all the time. I would 1000% take that over the new G90 M5 wagon, without question. That would be the car to get, RS6 with rear-wheel drive all day long. The Audi RS6 in this generation is effectively done. They've come out with the new A6 generation, and so the next generation RS6 is right around the corner. A lot of people are saying it's going to be hybridized, which, you know, tracks. And so I guess we'll have to see what that ends up looking like, and then who ends up selling more. Who's got the bigger, big back wagon? It'll be interesting to see. We reviewed some really great hybrid cars on this channel. Corvette E-Ray, Bentley Flying Spur Speed, Cayenne Turbo E-Hybrid. On the Autofocus channel, I reviewed the McLaren Artura, which was a highlight for sure. All of those cars are great in hybrid form because the hybridization is either adding to what makes the cars already great or giving us something new that really makes the experience all the more worth it. Bentley Flying Spur Speed is an absolute boat of a car that is now smoother and quicker because of the hybrid system and handles better than this car, by the way. And then the Corvette E-Ray now has all-wheel drive because of the hybrid system and explosive acceleration with a reasonable weight penalty. The new hybrid M5 is certainly quicker in a lot of scenarios now, but not really in a way that fully justifies the hybrid element, in my opinion. I feel like there isn't anything about this experience that couldn't have been achieved without hybridization. And yeah, I guess you're getting electric-only range now, but that doesn't make this new M5 any more fun to drive than the last one. And yes, BMW claims they didn't have a choice when it comes to making this new M5 a hybrid. And so if that's the case, they should have gone with the absolute bare minimum level of hybridization. I'm talking having like a 5 kilowatt-hour battery pack or something like that that only gives you 7 miles of EV range. That way, you can shave off a very considerable amount of weight of the car and still offer that hybrid acceleration that we have here in this M5, then maybe tune the V8 to put out a little bit more power because the engine in this car is still technically underpowered compared to the previous M5. And now you've got a lighter and more powerful M5 that still offers all of the same things on paper, but then has a much more enjoyable driving experience because it's smaller and lighter. It could have been so simple, BMW. And something I feel like a lot of people aren't really talking about with this car is the fact that it also doesn't sound good. Like, for a V8, this really doesn't sound that good at all. I think most of that is because of the exhaust setup in this car, which you pretty much can't hear. When playing music at like halfway volume, you really can't hear anything as far as the engine. And of course, you've now got that even further synthesized V8 noise pumped in that just sounds more just inauthentic, you know? I feel like BMW's perspective on all this has to be crazy, like their perception of all the hate they get on the cars online. We're the only German brand offering a manual sports car outside of Porsche, and they still complain. We're actually keeping the V8s in our cars, unlike other people, and they still complain. We finally gave them a wagon after they begged for years, and they still complain. Yeah, That's us BMW fans. But I think that more so comes from a place of knowing what BMW can be, more so than being mad at what BMW is. But we cannot ignore the fact that this brand is changing. And this new M5 is a great car, but to me, it's just not M enough. But hey, at least the old ones are gonna get cheaper now.